This is my overview of Futato chapter 18. Now in this chapter you'll notice that we're going to be talking about the cal imperfect, which you've already obviously had, the cal imperfect. But in this case it's the imperfect of first yod and first aleph verbs. Now there isn't going to be a whole lot here to memorize either in this chapter or the next one as it relates to verbs anyway. There will be other things, but in this chapter, focused as it is just on the imperfect of these two weak verbs, there's not going to be a whole lot. You already know the prefixes, and that's the most important thing. Now we're up to chapter 18, and probably countless times, well, if I'm more accurate, hundreds and hundreds of times, when we get to a verb form in our exercises and we go to parse it, what's the first thing I ask? Is there a prefix? If it's a prefix, you know it's an imperfect. Okay, and I've also discouraged you from memorizing vowel patterns unless I tell you one is important. That's what's going to happen here in this chapter. I'm going to tell you when a particular thing is important. What I want you to see is that the method we've been using for parsing, knowing your vocabulary so well that when you see a verb form in the exercises, you will know if it's prefixed or not. Okay? That's the goal. Because once you get to that step, you know what the prefix is, you know what the lemma is, the rest will fall into place if you know your prefixes and their endings. And then, of course, if it doesn't have a prefix, then you know your endings for the perfect. Okay? So here we go. We have here the note by Futato that first yod verbs in Biblical Hebrew are placed in two groups. There's a first yod and a first yod vav. Now what he means by that is that in original Semitic, what we call first yod verbs, some of them actually began with a vav in the lemma. Yod and vav were sort of interchangeable in more ancient Semitic languages. That's really all you need to know. You don't have to know the history of why you're looking at this form or that form, or why this form does something differently than that one does. You don't need to know. You need to know your vocabulary, and you need to know if it's prefixed. Okay? So the first group here, the first yod and verb that he has, original yod, will follow the standard paradigm, except, again, for these vowel changes. Don't worry about the vowel changes. Now look at this. Here's our strong verb, in other words, the verb it's not weak, and of course it's from katal, kof, tet, lamed. That's sort of the paradigmatic verb. We have yiktol, tiktol, tiktol, so on and so forth. And we would look at this, and we know our vocabulary. We know what the lemma is, kof, tet, lamed. And then, therefore, we know it's prefixed. We have yiktol, no ending. That is a third masculine singular, cal imperfect from katal. If we go over here, we have yod, yod, tav, bet. Same question I'm going to ask you. Again, you've heard it hundreds of times. Look at this verb form. Is there a prefix? Yes, there is. We know that lemmas typically have 3 consonants. So we know that the lemma here, plus if we've memorized our vocabulary, we know here that we have yatav. And therefore that makes this first yod a prefix. It doesn't matter if you memorize or know that the pointing here is ye. The hierarch yod vowel is your first vowel, and then your second vowel is an A. It doesn't matter. I could take these vowels away and ask you the same question. Is there a prefix, yes or no? You'll be able to tell, again, if you know your vocabulary. So it's a very standard pattern, which means when we get down to first yod verbs that are original vav, there's going to be something different. And you can read up here about what's different. I'm just going to show you. So here we go with our strong form, yiktol, tiktol, tiktol, so on and so forth. And then we get this. And I ask you the question, is there a prefix? And you're going to freeze up. And, well, I don't know because there's only 3 consonants. That's true. We've actually already had, though, other instances where the first consonant of the original lemma will assimilate into the second one. But we don't have a dagesh here. We don't have assimilation. So what are we to do? Well, here's what I want you to remember. What's different about this form? All of these forms. Look at all the prefixes. What's different? The answer is, under the first consonant, there is a tsera, the 2 dots. This is the only time you're going to see an initial consonant of a verb that gets 2 dots. Right? Just think of it that way. Now that, again, there may be exceptions the further in Hebrew that you go, but what I'm telling you here, for this point at this time, when you look at a form and you know that's not a noun because you know your vocabulary really well, and you know this is not a noun, it's something different. It's not a preposition. Process of elimination, it has to be a verb. As soon as you see the tsera underneath the first consonant, that is your tip-off. Write it down. And you should be writing these tip-off devices, these tells that I'm giving you. That is your tip-off that you have a first yod verb in the imperfect. That's it. That's what you need to take away from this whole section. When I see what I know is a verb and the first consonant could very well be one of those prefix consonants. It's either going to be yod, tav, aleph, or nun. I see that accompanied by a tsera vowel. I know that I have an imperfect. I know it's in the kal, and I know the lemma is an original first yod verb. That's all you need to know, and you will get these. Now, down here, there's the note that the verb halak follows the first yod original vav paradigm in the imperfect. So an imperfect of halak will be yelek. This is an odd one. You've got to remember this one. Okay, so you've got yelek. Taking my advice, is the first consonant possibly an imperfect prefix? Yeah, it is. There's a yod. And what's the vowel? Tsera. Okay, immediately your mind should go, I have a kal imperfect of a first yod verb. But then you think, well, yalak, I don't have that for my vocabulary. No, you don't. But you do have halak, and you do have this note. So write it down. Halak will use this pattern. Okay, but you just have to remember halak behaves that way. His other note, the verb natan also has tsere as a theme vowel. That's the second vowel. Yatain. Again, this one's easier to tell because if I asked you the question, is there a prefix? Well, maybe yod could very well be a prefix. Do I have yatan? No, I don't. Do I have a tsera here? No, I don't. So I know it's not a first yod verb. Well, what other situations could there be when I'm missing a consonant of a lemma? If I assume this one's a oh yes, natan. First nun verbs, the nun will assimilate into the second consonant and sure enough, I have a dagesh there. Again, I'm trying to teach you procedures so just like detective work. You go, or football. You want to use a football analogy. The quarterback takes the ball, and you've heard the announcer say he's checking his receivers down. He's looking instantly to see who's open. This one, the guy on the left, guy in the middle, guy on the right. Nope. Is the running back out there? Can I throw to him? Tight end. He goes through the check down list. That's what you have to do. And that's what I've been trying to model for you as well. So you read this note as well. In natan, in the perfect, the final nun will also assimilate into the perfect ending. So we won't have natan ta, we will have natat ta. Okay, so just keep this note in mind. It's important. He's giving you some weird ones. Karat, again, behaves oddly the same way too. So this note is important, and the piece of advice I just gave you about the tsere vowel underneath the prefix. First aleph verbs, imperfect. These are very regular. Again, yiktol, tiktol, tiktol. Here, if I asked you the question, hey, look at this form. Does it have a prefix? Yep. The only exception is down here. Look at this one. The first common singular. Omar. Okay, so this is the thing to take away from this section. In first aleph verbs, I will have a situation where the aleph, the first common singular, will not be aleph, aleph, mem resh. Only one aleph will show up. The other one is sort of absorbed, or you could say the other one disappears. So that is the thing to take away from this section. So we have Yomar, Tomar, Tomar, Tomari, Omar, with only one aleph. Okay. Again, notes, you can read those yourself. The aleph is lost, as we just said in vocab, and that's it. That's the chapter. So again, I'm trying to condense this down to 2 or 3 things to take away that will help you immensely when it comes to the exercises. But again, all of this is for naught if you have not memorized your vocabulary really, really well. That's the end of this video.